Well, good morning. Thank you for coming. We have our wonderful Steve Morrill back with us for a second year. For those of you who aren't aware, we had Steve come in last year to talk with our parents, and he was so amazing that we brought him back to talk with the middle school specifically, and then we brought him back to talk with the upper school specifically. He's great. So yes, he is here to share the latest and maybe not so greatest social media apps, how you as a parent can help troubleshoot, what to look out for, and with that. Oh, and also we are scheduled to finish up at 9:30. That being said, we'll do a formal wrap up around then, but Steve has graciously offered to stay a little bit longer. You will quickly see that there is simply not enough time to begin to really scratch the surface on this subject. So if your schedule permits, feel free. Just know that we'll stay a little bit later. Okay? Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Glad to be back. This is always a good trip to come down. And it's always fun to see the difference that 40 miles makes. Right? So I'm at Loyola Lake Hill in Towson, and some of the things that we'll talk about are popular here, but not in Baltimore. But give it 3 months, they'll be popular in Baltimore and vice versa. So a little bit of background on me, just so you know where I'm coming from and how I fit into this space. I've worked in some type of academic technology since '95. I ran and taught in higher ed for 13 years before moving into the secondary world. So now I work in the 6 through 12 environment, all boys school. So there's some interesting conversations that are had around social media there. My undergrad is in IT. My master's work is in information security. So I have a vested interest in some of this. So I have background as an educator, as a technologist, and now as a security guy. My other hobby right now is I moderate the Loyola Cyber Team. So kind of cybersecurity in the high school world is becoming very popular right now. So we have a team that's done very well. And a lot of the information that I get honestly comes from conversations with students. Right, I'm starting to get a little bit of this silver stuff up here now, so I have less credibility in the student world. But through my interactions with the students, that's where we can have an open dialect about that, and it's interesting. And as soon as I say, do you talk to your parents about this stuff? Why would I talk to them? But hopefully some of the information you get today will help you at least know how to start that conversation. What's different this year from last year as far as my presentation format, typically I travel with one of my students, but they've already missed 8 days of school. The administration was not happy asking, hey, can I take a guy out for not happy. So I'm going to try to fill that part in of what they would have said and how they've communicated. Some of those guys have very different relationships with their parents. Sometimes it's single parents, sometimes it's an interesting home life, and that really changes the conversation, and sometimes changes their use of social media and what they talk about, how they conduct themselves. So we're going to be all across the board, from technology to kind of social psychology to teenagers, and we're across the board. I want this to be as interactive as possible. I can talk for hours. That's the teacher in me. So feel free to stop me and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Back up. So we're going to start with a quiz. Okay, so we're gonna play pick the dots and identify the okay. We'll start with the easy one. Facebook, and Facebook is so yesterday, right? So there's not, some of my juniors and seniors still use Facebook a good bit, but we've moved on, at least the younger students have moved on to other things. How about this one? Whisper, yes, that one's new.
I heard about that on NPR.
Okay, all right. And what was their opinion of Whisper?
Well, so it's a site where you can be completely anonymous. You don't have to say who you are, so you can say whatever you want. And I guess they were making the point that there were some other platforms like this years ago, but because of foul language and suicide, stuff, and that they didn't have enough people to kind of like clean it up, and so, but Whisper supposedly has a full staff, and it's taking off.
It is taking off, and that we'll come back to that anonymity point. That's always good. Anonymity in the social world is sometimes the thing. How about my friend the ghost? Snapchat. Okay. How many have seen that one on the phone? Okay. We'll talk about Snapchat a little bit. Instagram, that's the easy one. How many are my Instagram folks? Okay, fair enough, good. Fine. Good with Fine. Okay. Ask FM? Hate it, yeah. Yeah, I have an interesting story about Ask FM. That one's
I don't know what that is.
awful. Well, think about it as Whisper, but with a little twist. What's that? Yes. Some of these. So here's the fun thing about tech, and this I'm a little bit of a history buff too, because technology history is shorter than other history. How many times, and you can point back to history, and a lot of times of when things were created for good and had really good intentions, and then somebody with a twisted mind took it and made it for evil. And a lot of these were created for absolutely good educational reasons, and then the people that made it, their brain doesn't work that way. Just like most software developers don't think about security when they write an application. And then they look at what someone did with it, like, how did you arrive at that use for it? And that's, a lot of these are rooted in good. That's where the conversation has to come in, especially at home. I'm not going to preach to you how to be a parent. Everyone parents their own way. I'm just going to give you some examples of what I've seen, what's maybe worked for some of my students, maybe what hasn't worked for some of my students, and what they somehow I end up being the vent and soundboard, which is fine. When my mom did this or my dad did this, they don't get it. I'll try to share some of that with you today. My friendly blue tea, Twitter. Yeah. Now, how many use Twitter in either their personal and professional lives, even outside of your students or your children? Okay, a couple. And how many of your children love Twitter? Okay. Not as popular, so this is all my guys use. My guys are all over Twitter for whatever reason. They tend to like it. And then my friend Kik. How many have this one? Okay. And this is one that we'll have some conversation about too. This one kind of, to your point, gets a little bit of that evil twist to it. Okay, so what I want to do today, what I don't want you to do, right? I don't want you to walk out of your paranoid. Okay? And that's a natural reaction. If we have time for what I like to call my creepy demo, we might walk out paranoid, but we'll see how much. So my goal is to raise awareness today, but not paranoia. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this, right? Talking awareness, not paranoia. We're going to talk about social engineering and how it works. We're going to talk about how you and your kids can be socially engineered, and it doesn't take much, right? So if I want to social engineer someone, I'm trying to elicit a response. Children at that age are very easy. Oh, it's shiny, it's new. Yeah, I'm going to reply to that. Sometimes you don't know who you're replying to. If we have time for the demo, we'll go through that. And then we're going to spend some time on how you can protect. Protect is a loose word because people have these devices in their hands, and there is no magic application, software. There's nothing that will protect your kids 100%. It's just not going to happen. The only protection is the conversation and hopefully building up that little bit of trust. Is it logical to say we're going to go home and take the device away? No, that's not going to happen. Because if you do, they're just going to go use another device, their friends. They're still going to get it. So we're going to talk about how to hopefully get through that. So this quote has different context now. I've been using it since 2011, but it's still very relevant, but it takes on a very different meaning today. So when the social media revolution started, we likened social media to the NSA. And hey, anything I want to know, I can just go out and find it. Right? So as the adult community, we're going to talk a little bit today about what information is publicly available about you. Even before we heard the name Snowden, or before we heard NSA had connections to all of our favorite social media sites, right? They figured it out. They figured out, if we want to know, we don't have to go knock on doors anymore. We can just get their Facebook account and get a good idea of what they're up to. So there's a lot of sticky situations there. One of the things that's been interesting in how NSA or any people treat social media is that thought of, why mark it private? That doesn't mean anything, really. And I'll show you some ways around that a little bit. The 2013 numbers were just published last week on how many smartphones were shipped. So a little over 1 billion smartphones were shipped. Anybody have any idea how many people are on the planet? Of course, you got the slide, so I can't quiz you. That's 1 smartphone for every 7 people on the planet.
Wow.
Okay? So when we talk about how many people have devices in their hands or in their pockets and what information is on those devices, it changes the conversation even more so than last year. These numbers are up 25% from last year. So it's only going to increase. So the thought of, well, after I'm done today, good morning, after I'm done today, I'm going to go home and I'm going to hold that device because I paid the bill. You do. But sometimes that's a knee-jerk reaction that might not work, considering your buddy down the street, they can just go use their phone. Yeah. Some fun stats. 78% and change of the market are Android phones, and then 15% are Apple iOS type phones. So these numbers are fun. These are worldwide numbers. Kind of the Apple iPhone phenomenon seems to be an American thing. So if I took a quick survey, how many people have an iPhone in here? Yeah, most people. How many people have Android? Me. Okay, so.
And all of the students have iPads.
Yes, right. So these are fun stats from a global perspective, but this 15.2 makes up a good bit of this one. Okay, so we did our little quiz on some of the apps that we're going to talk about today. Some icons I didn't put up there, which are making a reemergence. This is the professionals' Facebook, right? LinkedIn. How many get a LinkedIn account? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about things in the professional and the adult community, because we are just as vulnerable as the students are because of things that we post. So LinkedIn was developed. It's a great tool. We put our professional lives out there, and we tend to kind of mix the lines. So how many people have their LinkedIn account linked to their Facebook or linked to their Twitter? Okay, you can do all that, right? So if you're trying to keep your professional separate from your personal life and you start linking the accounts, all of a sudden we've got this crossover, and now the worlds are mixed. And students find themselves in the same position, and that becomes important when they go to apply for this magical world called college. Right? They think they're keeping those lives separate. So my students that are working in the cyber world, they got LinkedIn accounts, they're working on internships. Some of them have linked it to their Facebook account. Now they've been around me long enough to know what not to put on their Facebook, but their friends don't. Right? And all it takes is that one random photo tag of you somewhere where you didn't think anyone had a camera, and now all of a sudden you have a problem. It wasn't you doing it, but it's that whole guilt by association all of a sudden. So we'll go there. Here's another fun one, Foursquare. Anybody use Foursquare? This one's making a comeback. So Foursquare is an application that plugs into Facebook. So when you walk into the Starbucks in the morning, it auto-posts the status, I'm in Starbucks. Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Can I ask just a second? So
Yeah.
Facebook. I had put a thing on Facebook, and yes, there was a picture of my kid, that's not, but someone else said, oh, does Morgan go to Severn? Like she went through this whole thing. Am I able to delete her comment on my page?
You can delete that comment off your page.
Yeah.
So as long as it's posted to your page, yes. That's in the Facebook world. Twitter world, not so much. Okay. But in the Facebook world, yes.
Okay.
So Foursquare is an obnoxious application that a couple of my friends have installed. So every time they walk into the gym, Mike's checked into the gym. I don't care. But where that becomes important, and we did this to, I don't have it in this slide deck, but we did it to an unfortunate professor, it was in Stanford, might have been Stanford, where he had a very predictable morning routine. He went to Starbucks in the morning, then he arrived to work, and his phone checked him in every place he went. So how creepy would it be? You're an instructor, and you have a student walk up to you the last day of the semester in the Starbucks. Here's my paper, so it's not late. How did you know I was here? Your phone told me. So it's not hard to track you. It's very, very easy. Whole new world. Okay. We go back to history. Anybody know why smartphones originally had GPS chips put in them? 911. E911, right? So as people moved away from traditional home phones, and that's how 911 used to work. You pick up the phone, if you're incapacitated or otherwise have a problem, they're still going to send help to the address that popped up on the screen. Right? Then we move into the cell phone world, and now you dial 911, and you don't pop up anymore. So the Feds got involved and said, okay, we need to find a way to fix it. We'll put GPS chips in your phone. It'll be a wonderful thing. It will help people. Okay? It did. But now, what's happened? Lots of other developers have decided, well, we can use that chip. Right? We have these wonderful things called open APIs and shareware and freeware. We can write applications to take advantage of that. Lots of people have. There's companies that have built, multi-billion-dollar reputations on location tracking, location profile. Ever noticed if you're near the Home Depot and you might get a random text about, hey, we have 20% off this week, or you're in Walmart and you get a Target ad, hey, this is cheaper at Target. That's all geolocation. Right? So the phone knows where you are. It's tracked your search history. If you scan, if you use that wonderful little barcode scanner, and you scan who's got the best price, that's all shared with each. So if it's between Amazon or Target or Walmart, all that's shared amongst themselves. And Millennial Media is a company based out of Baltimore. That's what they do. Right? They gather all that information and sell it back to Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, wherever. Huge, huge business. That's kind of the big data. If you've heard that term, that's where the term is. So that's why they were originally enabled. Now fast forward 10 years. And here's where we are. Okay, fun part. Everything we talk about today is 100% publicly available. I'm not going to do any trickery. We're not going to write code. We're not going to do exploits. We're just going to use this wonderful database called Google. And that's it. How many people know, or do you know, that, at least if you live in Maryland, all of your land asset information is public knowledge? Okay? So if someone wants to know they look up your address, or there's your house, there's what you paid for it, there's when you bought it, there's who you bought it from. Right? Same thing with court records. Any civil or, right in my head, criminal, thank you. Not that we have we deal with any criminals, but all that's public knowledge. So how great is that as a hiring manager now? I've got social media, I've got criminal records, I can do my own background check for the most part, except the really deep stuff. But that's a lot of fun, kind of. But we try to share that with the students, that all that stuff is out there. And so what you do today is going to have an effect on you 5, 10, 15 years. This is a fun conversation if you haven't had it with your child. Their idea, or lack of idea, on privacy versus control is very different from mine, maybe very different from yours, and varies widely from year to year. I can sit down, and you can comment on this too. If I sit down with a freshman and talk about what they consider private, and I sit down with a senior about what they consider private, I get very, very different answers.
Can I put that in context?
Sure, absolutely.
So Instagram is a middle school, it's a main social media app for middle school. And we, several times I've seen Instagram accounts that are private, so it's locked, so when you put the child's name in, nothing comes up. But you can still see how many followers they have, and like in the hundreds, some in the thousands. So it's private, so to speak, but obviously this, they're allowing lots and lots of people to follow them, who I can't imagine they know personally.
And the information that they'll put out there, sometimes it's what they're doing illegally. Sometimes it's abuse. Sometimes it's problems at home. They put a lot out there. And if you have a conversation, I've been in some schools where we do a little bit of recon prior to coming to the school, obviously with the principal's permission, on what some of their students are doing in a completely public forum. And some of the kids I can recognize, and I know what you did on your summer vacation, possibly under the boardwalk. And they turn the color of that chair. But it's public knowledge, and sometimes that's the part that they don't get. And that's where that home conversation comes in on how do you approach that? Everyone's relationship with their child is different, and they react differently to that conversation. But they're still going to put it out there, maybe, depending upon how you have that talk. So privacy and control. In your world, in my world, I don't like people to know I try to keep my personal life separate from my professional life. I have a LinkedIn account. Yep, that's where I've worked. That's what I've done. There's my hobbies. There's my degrees. Okay, that's fine. my rule for Facebook, unless I would invite you to my house for dinner, you're not my Facebook friend. Right? I don't have a Twitter account. I don't do Instagram. I don't do Vine, LinkedIn, Facebook. That's pretty much about it. I have family that live all over the planet. Facebook's convenient for, I have two little nieces now. That's convenient, but I keep it pretty locked down. And I have at the last page of that slide deck is lots of links for how to change your Facebook privacy settings, kind of that lingo deciphered, so you know when you check that box who actually can see that. Funny story, and I know Facebook's kind of yesterday, but this is still one of my favorite Facebook stories. We had a mom that was very upset. I did a very upset phone call that they were on summer vacation. Mom was in a very scantily clad bikini and was horrified that her son's friends could see the photo. When you posted it public, yeah, they're going to see it. So she was horrified, and it was made out to be my problem. I'm going to help you with it, but I didn't post it. I don't know why you're yelling at me. But it's that natural reaction to, wait a minute, I didn't understand who I shared that with. Children don't make that link yet. So this is our responsibility to try and help.
I just want to make a quick comment on
Sure.
this privacy issue before I forget, because it's going to affect probably most people in this room at some point, and I was unaware of this. My daughter just got her driver's license, as to a bunch of her friends. The kids now, when they get their driver's license, they're taking
Yep.
pictures of it.
Oh, you're gonna love 3 slides from now.
Okay.
You're gonna love
I was
this.
like, don't you dare! You got your picture, your address, your date of birth, everything, and they're posting pictures of their new driver's license.
So in Instagram, if you do a search in Instagram, I did this 2 days ago, you will get, it was 36,200 and change licenses that were out there.
Nice.
Yeah, crazy stuff. So again, that link between privacy and control, they don't consider, most of them don't consider information private. And I don't, not knowing enough of the social psychology, I don't know what makes it tick sometimes, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. Okay, easy question. How many people have installed an app on your phone? Hopefully everybody, right? Okay. Now, how many people have read that wonderful little blurb where it says, we're going to do this, do you accept? Anybody ever read any of that? Okay. I have unfairly kind of labeled the generation I work with as the next finish generation. They don't read anything. It's next, I don't care, next, I don't care, finish, I want the app, thank you. And they don't read anything. So there's a reason that stuff is there. Most of the time it's helpful information. I'm not a lawyer, but I read everything. I've learned my lesson hard a couple of times. This is my all-time favorite app. And this is an app that I bet everyone in here has. Well, you all have iPhones, so you have it already. It's now pre-installed because of this problem. This is from the Flashlight app. So everyone has the Flashlight app on their phone, right? Pretty much. Greatest app of all time. Right? I can use my cell phone as a flashlight. This is a great multitasking tool. I can find my way there. Now, when the first Flashlight app was written, this is the screen of what it told you it was going to do, and nobody read it. And you had 50, 60 million people that had this on their device. The first one should scare the heck out of you. Why does the Flashlight care where you are on the planet? Okay. It wants your personal information. It wants your contact list. It wants text messages. It wants photos. Why does it want that? So anybody have a guess of what this thing actually was?
Yeah.
It's a piece of malware, right? That mask itself has the Flashlight app. So it came down to the phone, and then it's like, great, you had the Flashlight works. I can see in the dark. But what you didn't know is it was taking all your information and shipping it out somewhere else. So, we all work with some folks that probably have some contacts we'd love to have on our phones. All the information got shipped out. Photos. Yeah, there was one gentleman I spoke to at a presentation. He was a financial manager and had usernames and passwords for the brokerage accounts on his phone. Clear text.
When's the paranoid part supposed to go away?
And so awareness, right? So you might come out a little paranoid, but it's awareness.
Yeah.
I bet you'll read this now, right? Yes, ma'am.
Can probably.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it the app actually called the
It was. So Apple now pre-packages one with their operating system to avoid things like this. Apple, by the way, does a really good job of kind of looking at apps before they put them into the iTunes store, but they don't catch them all. So the point here is your children can download apps. They don't read what they're installing.
Right.
That's why it's important to know, hey, here's a new icon, and every time I do this, I learn about a new app I didn't know about yesterday, because they come along that fast. So check out what's on there, and you can go into the phone and see what permissions it's requested or what permissions it has access to. I will not upgrade the Facebook app on my phone. So in January, Facebook came out with a new release, but they want access to a lot more parts of the phone than they did before. They say it's to enhance the user experience. I say no, I don't want you enhancing my experience. I'll keep the old one because I don't want you to have free reign to my SD card and go through my pictures if you want. That's not happening. So I won't install it. So some people have to make decisions on, okay, I don't want it to do that. I'm not going to run the app. Funny part, do you pay anything to use these apps? No. Do we have a say in how they're used? No. Right. So unless we're paying for a service, they're going to say, tough cookies, you don't pay for it. This is where we're going. Okay, I'm just not going to go there with you. Free market.
For your future presentation, Saturday Night Live actually spoofed this whole thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah.
So it's a whole bit about the one guy in the world who didn't read these and had his life ruined. Everybody else said, you don't read that?
I haven't seen that. Go to bed way too early. I'm seeing all this stuff. That's awesome. I gotta check that out.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
I also heard on the radio, like when Flappy Birds, there was an app, and it was like charging. It was one of these things too. You brought it on your phone.
Yeah.
After they got rid of it, and they brought it back, and it was like charged. It's like doing all these charges.
There are some apps that you can pay to play, so to speak. There are some games where you can buy credits or buy the next level up or buy the next blue widget or whatever it happens to be. And if you've linked, and I've talked to some parents that have horror stories that have linked their iTunes account to a good credit card.
I think this is like malware where it was actually like the Russians or somebody was doing something. It was just like trying to build money out of it.
It's possible. So there's these fun things called botnets where there's malware that gets on them and then they turn into big farms. It's a really fun story that we can probably get into offline, but it's very possible. So I do not link any of my mobile stuff to a credit card, and or if you do have a link to a card, only have a very tiny limit attached to it. Okay, so Instagram. There is a ton of money in social media, whether you realize it or not. So Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion. All right. They're trying to make money off of it somehow. They didn't spend $1 billion just to spend it. They have a plan. Okay. So there is money. We know it's used on mobile devices. We go back to the two things. We go back to the GPS concept. You know why GPS chips were put in there? By default, your camera, unless you turned it off, and there's a way to turn it off at the end of this, at the end of your papers there. If the camera's turned on, every time you take a photo, it tags that photo with where you took it. You pinpoint it on the map. Great for college kids that are traveling abroad. Hey, you can track my status as I go through Europe. Great. The other problem is, especially in the Instagram world, to take a photo, post it, there's your home address. Especially if it's your kid at home, taking a picture of the cat, posting it, it's geolocated. You can turn that off. And I suggest you. Instagram does ask you now, so at least they kind of listen once the outcry started. And then in the Instagram world, I'm going to show you the next slide. We'll kind of go through the mind of it. I have seen folks create anonymous accounts and then either post pictures of the boyfriend or girlfriend they're having problems with, a lot of times in compromising positions. And that's kind of where the cyberbullying part starts. So luckily you've got great people like Mary and Samantha that help you with that. It becomes an issue. Okay, fun part. So Instagram, while you can mark an account private, and privacy has a whole different process at that point. Instagram does have a live feed, and there's 2 links you can go to. These are constantly pulling what is being posted real time. So as this is going by, you're looking globally at what's happening. There's some really interesting photos that come across Instagram now, thanks to what happened in Colorado. Legalizing marijuana.
Okay.
So now you have very interesting photos coming out of Colorado because now there's no fear of what they're posting now that it's legal. Doesn't mean it's legal everywhere else in the country. So that's a whole other problem that's going to come out of that. But this brings up some new issues. So this is going to be real time. Now, you can probably figure out from here which some of these pictures that were taken by smaller children, younger children, right? They like to take pictures of their friends. They like to take pictures of dog, cat, plant. They just like taking pictures to post them. Okay? I know that. Right? So put on your bad person hat for a second. Right? For the darker side of the web. People that are out there trolling for children know what children take pictures of. It's not hard to start a conversation with a child on Instagram, on Twitter, on Snapchat. It's not hard to start that conversation. Based off what you've had, the chat around the dinner table is how they're going to respond to that person. Again, remember, privacy control, they're like, oh, somebody wants to talk to me on the internet. It's cool. They don't think bad guy. They don't think, hey, well, I have the same dog. My dog's name's Jack. What's your dog's name? There's a conversation.
It is so interesting how if a parent tries to, God forbid, gain access to the Instagram account, it's an invasion of privacy. Yet, when a stranger, wants to strike up a conversation about the dog, that's okay. In their West,
Right.
it's more okay than their parents.
Exactly. So that, and again, I'm not going to preach to you how to parent, but that's just
That's
think
the
about
logic.
how that works.
That's the
Right.
logic.
So these two will pull live info, and they're open. You can click on a photo, and then if that person's account is open, it'll show you all the posted photos from that person, along with all the comments under it. To your point, here's my favorite Instagram. You can go out to Instagram and just do a search for license, and you'll get about 36,000 results. I picked a guy that hopefully nobody knows because he's not in this country. He posted a picture of his passport. But teenagers love this. They will get their license, they come out of the DMV, click, and post, and don't think twice. I got it. This is cool. To Mary's point, if their account's private but they have 2,000 followers, I don't think I know 2,000 people. Right? So a 16-year-old, does a 16-year-old really know 2,000 people? Why not? But that's their little social network. So this, especially if you have children that are getting ready to get their license, or they're learners, or passports, or you're going on a trip, they love to post this stuff. Here's the other problem. When you take a photo, some of them take a photo of their license in their wallet. What's typically next to their license? School ID or credit card. So now you have license, full name, and there's the account number. They've got everything they need to make a charge. So if you ever get into a situation where, how did they get my number? Okay, well, it might have come from somebody posting it on Instagram. Happens every day. Okay? So the thought of, what are you taking pictures of? Why do you know what you took a picture of? When they take a picture in front of your house and there's the mailbox with the address in it, and then they post it. Fun stuff.
Can I ask
So,
a quick question?
yes, ma'am.
Are the students offered a course like this, or a seminar like this? Do you speak to the students?
I have here, we did this last year, yes,
We're
ma'am.
doing it right now with ninth grade in wellness,
Okay.
right now.
So they are being exposed
Presently.
to, because again, I think they will hear it differently from you than they would from.
Sure.
If I say, do you understand how ridiculous this is? You're ridiculous. Like,
Mom, really?
Yeah, they don't hear it, so, okay.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
On Instagram, any of these social media, if it's marked private, can you still get in there and look?
I'm going to
Or is
answer that
that
two
more
ways.
of
I'm
a
going to answer that two ways.
difficult task?
Things that are, so nothing's really difficult to get around. However, if I might ask you for a context question. So if it's marked private and you really want to know, sometimes people just create an account and send a request. 98% of the time, the person's going to say, yeah, sure, I'll let you in.
Okay.
Now, there are some ways, there's some nasty backdoor tricks that people can use to try and get around the security. They're illegal. But anything, my comment is anything you post online is never private. So
Right,
if you
but
want
as
private,
random
don't post
mom,
it. As random mom,
trying to see what someone's doing or what could be going on, and you go on, you know, you Google them and their Twitter account comes up, and then it's marked private. Random mom isn't really going to know how to get in that.
so Twitter, when we get to the Twitter part, so if the person that they're conversing with in Twitter is not marked private, you can always see one side of the conversation.
Right.
That's going to be open. The other side, you would need to, if you want to
Okay.
do it the legal way, you'd have to say, hey, let me get in, boom, there it is. My opinion is, if it's your phone, your bill, you're a follower and a friend.
Okay.
That's how I treat it. And some of the guys that I brought, and Mason was here with me last year, he's probably got the most open relationship with his parents I've ever seen. I've been to dinner there, and they'll talk about things that make me blush. And I'm not in the family. But they just have a very open relationship like that. So his younger brother is now in 8th grade, and completely open relationship. They're followers, they're friends. Hey, let me see what you're up to. Hey, mom, it's just a very different. I wish everybody was like that, but I know the reality. I wasn't that way with my parents.
Right.
And this was before the social media deal. Then it was the telephone game, right? By the time you went home, 10 of your friends knew about it, whatever had happened. Now it's 10,000 people know about it, which adds a whole new layer of stress to kids. There used to be a time when they could go get away from it. The dark side to this, especially I've seen this with young ladies. They post a picture, am I pretty? Really? You're really going to ask that question? Even if you are pretty, there's going to be somebody out there that says, no. It's a whole new social pressure that you have to deal with. So again, my degree is not in psychology, but it's I've been around children long enough to see the effect that has on them. And it's who are they going to go to for help? Hopefully, they come here for help. But sometimes you just got to watch. That's why if you start that chat now at the dinner table, hey, we saw this guy at Severn today. He told me not to take your phone, but I really want to. Let's talk about what's happening and how that works. And I know as a parent that's tough to say, hey, what's really going on? Hopefully you can start that chat. Okay, Kik. Kik's very popular down here. And actually, I'm going to go one slide forward and then come back. I pulled this one yesterday. The last time I was here, which was a year ago, Kik had 30 million subscribers. Now it's got 100 million. Right. We do some guest work with the FBI. We had an agent in last year. Kik is one of their favorite places to troll for criminals because it's pretty much a wide open network. Let's use the example that you decided maybe the grades weren't so good on the report card. You're going to turn texting off on your child's phone, but you leave the data plan turned on. So Kik is an application that has streaming video, it has text messaging, it has file sharing. There's really no privacy or control built into it. You register for an account, you can see the list of people and pick from them, and then boom, you start a little video chat. So it's kind of like Skype or FaceTime or pick your other favorite video chatting application. Kik, however, does not keep logs. So you can't go back and really look on the phone and see what they did. You can kind of see who they communicated with, but not necessarily what the communication was. Where I've seen this get awful, a lot of times see an Instagram account linked to a Kik account. So this is Instagram, and you'll have the guy's name, and then you'll have the Kik account. Unfortunately, there are lots of kids out here that will use this as a way to sell themselves. These are the pictures I could show you. Right? It doesn't take long to find ones that are 10 times worse than this. But they'll put a couple of racy photos on Instagram and say, hey, want a video chat with me? Here's my Kik screen. So if you see Kik on the phone, have a chat about who you're talking to. Friends on it? Maybe not. Mary?
The other thing with Kik that students can and will do if they're using it for bad, they can make an anonymous Kik account, which allows them to then cyberbully someone by sending them, hateful, ugly messages. But it's from it's an anonymous account, so the person they don't know who it is. And to your point, it completely bypasses the texting
Yes.
plan that you have on your, like with Verizon, for example. It's, so you can't track it as a parent. You don't know that it's, you to look for the icon. Right. We did though, and Dr. Smith, you can, did you call Kick at one point and have them block a? I think you
It
could
was
call.
one of those, it was one of them. Frankly, I can't remember which one it was. But yes, I called, and they were really good about it.
Yeah. See, it takes, but if you call and say, what, these are the messages, they'll disable that account, but then the child can just make a new one.
So the problem is 30 seconds later,
All right,
they go and create it.
same
I'm a
problem,
little bit
different.
confused, so it says Instagram at top and then Statagram, but you said this was Kik, sorry.
Right, so, good question. So let me back up. So Statagram is one of the search engines for Instagram. Right, you go out, this is where the live feed comes from. So this particular person, this is his Instagram account, that's his wonderful photo for Instagram. But he also has a Kik account. A lot of times you'll see Instagram linked to Kik, kind of the same way that you would link Facebook to other things. This is the kind of the Instagram to Kik relationship.
So it's about you're going to the netherworld when you go,
Yeah.
you're going to
Kind of.
okay.
Because this is untrackable. Now, FBI trolls Kik a good bit. And they've netted some, now unfortunately they've netted some people that got caught up in Dragnet. Some of them have been minors, charged as adults for child pornography. So it's interesting enough, Canada convicted their first minor of child porn in January. It was a female, her boyfriend and then ex-boyfriend started dating a new girl. She wasn't happy, got a hold of his phone, found nude photos of the new girlfriend, and then she turned around and shared them with all of her friends. Obviously, there were some bullying issues that went. She was arrested, prosecuted, convicted. There were plenty of people, and there are a few cases in this state, of minors now being lifetime convicted sex offenders because of photos that they've had on their phone. While I want to say the sexting phenomenon is old, in my mind it's old, but for those of you going through, having a middle schooler for the first time, it's brand new for you. It still happens. I'm not going to say it happens on a daily basis, but it happens. So the thought of, we're talking about these other apps, but there's still good old-fashioned texting. So keep an eye on that. That is on the phone unless they go through and delete it. I mean, unfortunately, if I find a lost phone at school, I attempt to identify who the owner is. We've had a few conversations based on content found on the phone while trying to identify the owner. So I don't think I'm shocked anymore by what I see on the phone, unfortunately. But it's hey, do you realize, according, and law hasn't caught up to technology at all. Do you realize, in the eyes of the law, you're on the wrong side here? And if this turns into a problem, there were at least 12 that I know about. 12 kids expelled from a Baltimore school last year because of the sexting incident. So lifetime consequence. So 100 million users on Kik. So if you see this one, tap that. And it runs on any platform. Right? So Windows, BlackBerry. I don't know anybody with BlackBerry anymore.
They don't need it.
So it's what's that?
They don't need one.
They don't need one.
They don't.
One of my favorite, our friendly white ghost,
Yeah.
Snapchat. So you've seen the icon, it's our little ghost. Here is my favorite quote. This was an article I pulled from CNN. I think it was last year. This is somebody's take on Snapchat. That it appears possible that teenagers are more likely using the app to safely explore the sort of silly, unguarded, and sometimes unwise ideas that have always occupied the teenage brain, in a manner that won't haunt them forever. In other words, they're chatting with Snapchat precisely because it's not like chatting on Facebook. Okay. I highlighted safely, and I will call out forever. I disagree with both of them. All right, it will come back to haunt them, and it can haunt them forever. All right, so whoever designed Snapchat, again, probably somebody in their college dorm thought, this is a really cool idea. I'm going to send you a photo, and it's going to self-destruct in 10 seconds. It doesn't self-destruct. Part of the story of the kids being expelled last year, some of them came from Snapchat. So when you get a photo, if you're quick enough, if you have 10 seconds, that's an eternity in the IT world, screenshot it. That was hard. So now I have the photo forever.
Define
Wasn't hard.
screenshot.
Screenshot. So if you want to, I'm going to relate it to the PC world. The print screen button on the PC will take a snapshot of whatever you're looking at that particular time, and you can save that as a file. Cell phone's the same way. I forget what the shortcut key on the Apple is. On an Android phone, it's the power button and the volume down button.
It's this little power button. It's the same on the
Okay.
iPhone.
It's the power and the home.
And then the home, if you press them at the same time, it'll photograph and save whatever's on the screen at that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you can save it, and that's your picture. Or if you have another camera, you take a picture of the picture. Let's go low tech for a second.
Yeah, right.
A woman came from here last year down at the lower school, and she said she did an experiment with 2 upper schoolers here, and he was able to screenshot it 3 times before it disappeared.
There you go.
I mean,
And then, so here's the tech part, right? As a security guy, if I get a hold of that phone, the photo is still in memory. There's a little tool you run. Actually, I think one of my guys told me there's an app for that now, where it'll pull off all your Snapchat, or the Snapchat photos you received. It'll funnel them into another area of the phone, and you have them.
That's a Snap Hack app.
There you go.
What's it called?
Snap Hack.
It's this guy. I just pulled him up. It's a little pink ghost.
Pink ghost.
He's winking at you.
We've used that to successfully unravel some cyberbullying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it will come back to haunt them. It is not forever. So really sneaky way, if you want to know what Snapchat's did on the phone, there's the app for it.
Well, like when a target comes to her, she was trying to gather information. This is a current student, and she installed Snap Hack and was able to.
Yep. So they're not gone. So this quote is completely inaccurate, probably from the guy who owns the company. You can pull those back. They are still there. There are ways to gather them so that, I'm just going to send this quick photo. It's not going to come back to get me later. Unfortunately, it seems to affect females a lot more than it does males these days, and that's going to be compromising for a long time. We were at a school, I think it was around this area, where I was talking to a parent, and it was a niece. She had done some modeling in college that was questionable, and of course it popped up in a job interview. You knew about it, so it will come back to haunt you.
I have a question about the Snap Hack.
Yes.
If I put it on, so if my kid has to have it on their phone to retrieve, I can't have it on my phone and retrieve any of their stuff.
Retrieve theirs, no. It's a relationship with the phone.
Okay.
So that's this part of Snapchat, and now we just looked, we talked about there's 1 billion smartphones on the planet. People are using their phones a lot more than they're using either tablets or PCs nowadays. I will personally never do banking on my cell phone, ever, for a couple of reasons. So now, there is malware being spread by Snapchat. So this one is about 2 weeks old, where you got a random picture of a smoothie, and you clicked on the smoothie and you said, great, install malware on me. I'd love for you to install your malware on my phone. So if there's a misconception that phones are immune from viruses and malware, that is a myth. They are completely open to viruses and malware. And that market, if you want to call it that, is growing by the day because people realize you're doing more work on your phone now than ever. Okay, we call it the next attack vector. So that's the next attack vector. Phones get malware, so there's some resources at the end. We'll talk about how to install antivirus and anti-malware on your phone. You need it. Especially if you're doing anything financial, please put it on your phone. If you get a random Snapchat photo and it's got a link in it, the same thing we tell you. The Nigerian prince that has $5 million that they want to put into your bank account, don't click on the link. Don't click on the link. And that still happens every day. Right? I've dealt, I'll get phone calls from, we try to be very nice and we support our parent community. And I'll get phone calls. I got this link, it was from the Postal Service, I really thought it was legitimate, and I gave them my social security number. Okay. I hope most homeowners policies now include identity theft management and mitigation. You don't have it in your policy. Don't give anybody information. Don't give them anything. Right? When I'm in the department store and they ask for my zip code, I make one up. I don't give anybody anything. I'm that parent. Twitter.
Steve, can I
Yes,
just
sir.
interject for 1 second?
Please.
I just looked back in my notes. The place I called was called Text Plus. That's another app which you might want to be aware of.
Okay. I don't know that one. I'll write that one down.
Yeah, Text Plus. It allows, a kid can open an account and generate anonymous phone number that he or she can then text from,
Yes.
right? So you can send nasty messages and there's no way to tell who's sending them. I called them though and told them who I was and what the problem was, and they were cooperative.
And that's a great thing. I talked to a 5th grader, and she had one of the most amazing comments I've ever heard, and I thought, that is such a great idea. For that exact reason. She was in a situation where folks were masking the number. They were using an app. There's lots of them out there that mask the number, so it looked like it was coming from a friend. So you start the conversation. Not hard to start pulling information out when you think you know the person. They had a predetermined phrase where if they got a message, if you didn't get the right reply back, wow, you've watched way too many spy movies, haven't you? But I'm like, that's actually, in today's world, that's actually a really good idea.
The kid
It
had
was
a phrase
really
with a
cool.
friend, you mean? Like the phrase with a friend?
Yeah, they were 5th graders, and they had this predetermined phrase where if I say hello and you don't say blue bike, I'm not talking to you because I know it's not you, because she was in a situation where that happened once before. I'm like, wow, you're in 5th grade.
Just for the elementary school, my daughter had Text Plus in 5th grade because she didn't have a phone. But we had an iPad in the house, and she could do Text Plus whenever she was Wi-Fi enabled. So she created a Text Plus account, which was great for her to contact her friends that did have a phone. But that's, it's a very innocent, good reason to start, and
Right.
it went downhill.
Well, like Steve said, I mean, most of these apps are created
Yeah.
for good.
I thought it was a great
Just
idea,
get used
actually,
to
until I realized it wasn't.
And we used to be these little closed communities, and now we're a global community, and some of us, I don't even know if I'm ready to participate in a global conversation at this point, but the younger you are, the more that doesn't make sense. You can't put that into perspective who some of these people are. So my friend Twitter, what happens when you send something out on Twitter? Where does it go, and what happens to it? This is one of my favorite things that just makes me scratch my head. Library of Congress, you are correct. So a tweet is not short-lived, and so every public tweet since 2006 has ended up in the Library of Congress. The rationale here is this generation's mark on society is digital, therefore we want to preserve that. So let's preserve Twitter. All right, so everything that people had for breakfast or, why? But they're all out there.
How could you ever go through all that information?
But there's lots out there to troll, right? There's just tons of information.
I
Yeah.
told this to the freshmen yesterday, and they didn't really tune into the how could you ever go through all this information, which suited me just fine. Like they just the fact that it was out there and college recruiters could tune into it if they chose to, that was enough to kind of get them lost.
So that's one that, and we talk about the same thing from a college recruitment. When I worked in the higher ed world, you're absolutely right. I went and looked at their Facebook page or their Twitter page or whatever it was at that time to see. I have a written essay here. Man, this sounds like a great student. I want them here. Let's see if they're real. Is it their real persona? What do we have? And let's come up with conversations. As a hiring manager, I hire for a school. Yeah, I'm going to go look at how you carry yourself outside. You're reflecting that institution I work for. I want to know how you carry yourself. Absolutely. If anyone's looking at sports scholarships, NCAA. NCAA has a zero tolerance policy for social media screw-ups. So when you graduate as a senior, and you're going to live it up right before you go to college, and especially if you're in college year and you're caught doing something or you're in a compromising position, they will yank your scholarship, no questions asked. Colleges their job is to be attached to you as a buddy. You're their social media buddy. to make sure we put an investment into you in a scholarship. We don't want you to screw it up. They will put a mentor with you to help you manage your social media. Wow.
If you were trying to, say, interview somebody and you went to look online at social media accounts, do you just Google? Do you have accounts for each different social media and you go in and search for that within those sites? What are the different ways they look?
Google's great, right? So I'll Google. I will look. I'll start with LinkedIn, and because that one's pretty much open for everybody. Okay, there's your name. Let me just plug it into Google and see what comes back. A lot of folks have Twitter, especially the younger folks will have a Twitter page. Okay, let's roll through that.
Google your own name and see what comes up.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Yeah, see what's been linked to, or other people that might share your name and maybe what they're up to. So yeah, Google is a great tool. It's the biggest database on the planet, and it's really powerful. I tell the students all the time, they don't realize that when they do research, what took me 2 weeks in a college library to do, they have in 30 minutes. It's amazing. The TI calculator that they carry has more processing power than what we went to the moon with. I think they can't put that into perspective. Processing, and they are a generation with access to information like none other. Some of the information is just junk, but they have to differentiate what's good and what's bad.
I do some background investigations for various companies, and when you fill out the application now, they're going to ask you about social media accounts, and that's part of the authorization now. You give them permission to check your credit and your housing records. You're also giving them permission to check the social media. So you are actually providing them that information, and then again, you can go back and check and make sure they're not other accounts that they're not providing you. That's all part of the application process.
Especially in any type of clearance, right?
Yes,
if you're going for any type of clearance,
and
it's all fair
there's
game.
there are services now that will check them for you. Just check them all.
We use one with the students, and this one is still active. You can look it up. It's called Clearable, and this one it is a paid-for app. It's like $5.99, but it will plug into your Facebook or your child's Facebook account and look for keywords, drugs, alcohol, compromising photos, that type of thing, and give them a score. So if you were to get it was based off folks that were going for a clearance. If you were going to go for your clearance, are there problems with either you or your friends? Because it'll crawl the comments and it'll crawl your friends' pages to look for things and give you a score on how you would do. So not that I'm trying to sell it, but there is a charge for it. But it is a pretty cool app to roll through a page and say, hey, here's some constructive feedback on your social media profile.
And the college kids, I've dealt with a lot of college kids. Some of you heard me talk about this at parent things. The college kids just don't get it. They just don't believe it's going to happen to them. Nobody's going to find it. Nobody's going to look. And they are. The hiring entities are looking.
They want to know who's representing their company.
We have a little less than 15 minutes
Okay.
left. I want to make sure we get to
Yes.
Whisper, and I also
Absolutely.
would ask that if you could just say a few words about Ask at Them,
Absolutely.
because that is definitely, at least at the middle school, something that
Got it.
we have.
So we will go. So just a quick thing about Twitter photos that go into Twitter. They don't go away either. And there's this wonderful index tool called Pitfog. I'll warn you now. Just like the rest of the internet, there's some things here you don't want to see. Use at your own risk. But Pitfog will give you can search by location or user for photos that have come up. If we have time, we'll come back to why that may be important. We'll come back to Whisper. So Whisper it's relatively new. It's free. It gives you some anonymity, supposedly. I pulled a couple of quotes from their CEO. Whisper's, just as a side note, Whisper's worth $81 million. I checked yesterday. So we're going to do $81 million off of people's secrets. Keep that in the back of your mind. Their CEO claims that their users are 70% women and more than half of them are under 25. Whisper gives people a way to be themselves. It's like tapping the need for people to express themselves anonymously, like a virtual support group. There's psychological research about how stress is elevated when you try to keep a secret. That's the value of a confession. So they're relating this to an online confession. One of that I looked at, so that this little page here that we looked at, one of these is in the background. It doesn't show up here, but you can always go out and see this. It says, My children aren't my husband's, they're his brothers, but he doesn't know. My children are not my husband's, they're his brothers, he doesn't know.
It's like Jerry Springer on.
Yes, great analogy, right? But here's the problem. Number one, there's a link. You say you have to at least be 17 to install this app. Like that's ever stopped anybody from installing that. This stuff is just spread out there for people to see. If you want to start a reply, you can publicly reply to that thing or that comment, or you can privately reply to it. So depending what the context is, we talk about the virtual support group. You can start a conversation here just as easy as you can on any other social media application. Only this one seems a little more anonymous. So there's not names associated with it unless you actually put them there. But it's still not hard to start a conversation. So you can imagine some of the conversation starters that have been posted. So again, that one's wide open too. There's a rolling, scrolling bar of all the things that are being posted real time, so you can kind of get a sense. I haven't seen a lot of students use this. It's starting to catch on a little bit in the Baltimore area, and unfortunately, that quote sticks. Most of the people I've talked to that use it are young ladies. Question?
From a law enforcement perspective, aren't devices identifiable by an IP address? So if you
Absolutely.
said, you know, I murdered my neighbor and he's buried in my garden, couldn't you?
Absolutely. If you read their privacy policy, they come right out and state, not that anybody reads that either, but they come right out and state that if we are served a subpoena, we can track your message back to your phone.
So everything is tracked to a device somehow.
Yes.
It depends on who wants to get.
Correct. That's why all this stuff is admissible in court. That's why it's subject to discovery when you're doing a background investigation, because that message had to originate from somewhere. That origination point can be tracked.
And has it gone as far as the courts with who owns the device? So I murdered my neighbor and he's buried in my garden. My son did that, but I pay his bill. But you know, like has
Great question. This is why the law system has to catch up.
or dad or
I'm not
mom
sure.
runs for political office and now there's people buried in their garden.
Or the virtual skeletons come out of the closet with what their kid did on social media. Yeah. Yes, sir?
I was gonna say, do you know of a company that would go and research about all the accounts and like get like a bio on a person? Like if I wanted to research my daughter, or she
Mhm.
my son, they're fine, but like just to see what, if they're using a whisper, somebody that, like the background checker, somebody that is.
There are companies, I can't remember what they're called, but there's a couple and they're new, like they're,
It's a great business opportunity.
well, yeah, they market themselves as a company that will help clean up your digital dossier, you know, your.
Reputation management.
Yes. I'm getting like a southwest part of the US. I think it's out of that part of the US. I learned about this 2 years ago and I can't remember the title, but I'm sure there's more since then.
There are some out there, especially for background investigation use. There's a lot of companies out there that are kind of at the consumer level. That's a great research question. I'll definitely take a look at it. I don't know of any off the top of my head. And just completely anecdotally, if Mason was here with me, he would say, "Don't do that. Your kid's going to hate you." Is what his comment would be.
I'm not gonna do it if you're employed, you know, you hear
Right.
employers and want to.
Right.
Is there
Yeah,
a
employers-
Service that, you know, does it for them or?
Yeah. So there's definitely, and you probably know some of the services that are out there having worked with
See,
them.
I'm the one that knocks on the doors and actually talks to
Okay.
people, which the kids don't actually do anymore. They don't talk to their friends anymore, like face to face. But the, you know, like the home office has companies that do that for them.
Okay. That's great. I'm going to look at that. That's a great research
Or a
question.
parent that has a kid deciding and they can just go.
That's a great question for, I still deal with some folks in the college world. I'm going to see if they've started doing that for applicants. I bet NCAA has something too. It's a great question. I like it. Okay, so Whisper is if you see it, have a chat on how it is. From an adult perspective, here's something fun that I kicked in today. For folks that use PC, if you've ever wanted to know, so when you go to a website, and this is where malware comes from, and this is where some data links can come from. So I just went to CNN yesterday to check the local news. This is a little product, little plugin for Firefox called Lightbeam. And I just started using it with my cyber team. It's really cool. it shows you when you go to a site, what other sites it talks to. So when you hit Facebook, or when you hit CNN, it's pulling in content from all these sources, and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, all the third-party advertisers. This gives you a little virtual map of what site it's going to and then where it lives on the planet. Really cool little tool. So this is one of those, hey, if you're going to sites and you're trying to figure out, hey, where did that malware come from, or if you're just curious about what relationships different sites have, there are people that have deals. You know, we talk about big data, we talk about selling your information, we talk about tracking. This gives you a visual representation of who that site you're dealing with has deals with and who they're sharing your information with. Okay, so we go back to that Millennial Media company out of Baltimore. They have offices worldwide. A lot of this information goes back to them. A lot of this is with the cell phone. When you're walking through the Home Depot and you scan that price and it says, well, it's cheaper at Lowe's, that's why for the next 2 weeks, you get random text messages that deals at Lowe's. They sold that info back. Walmart's been doing this for years, right? There's this RFID technology, it's a little chip for inventory tracking. Does a great job tracking inventory in the store, but when you come back, it tracks you in the store. And okay, well, how many people spent time in this aisle? What did they look at? How long were they here? How long did it, from the time they walked in to the time they walked out, were they here? How much did they spend? They typically put the tags in under for whatever reason. So it's kind of a neat, when you think about data and analytics, technology is the greatest place for that. And you carry around, I bet everyone in here carries their favorite tracking device. And depending what applications you install, depending what you've read in that little blurb about what it wants access to, you might have given them more access than you realized. Two different things. Some of the apps will gain access to your search history on your web browser. So if you're on your phone and you're searching deal of the week, or you're booking airline tickets, or you're checking whatever it is you're doing, most of that stuff's being shipped back up to the cloud and analyzed to then target. I know we're right on time, right? So and then to target. So I want to leave some. I will shut up and answer questions. I can talk for hours on this thing. Sorry, but I'll be happy to take any questions that you folks have. Ask FM. Thank you. Sorry. So Ask FM. Think about Ask FM as Whisper, only with a name associated to it, and link to a Facebook account sometimes, or link to a Twitter account sometimes, and Instagram. And here's where I've seen Ask FM used. Typically, it's back to my earlier example of, here's what I did on my summer vacation under the boardwalk with, insert your favorite person's name here. Or they'll, there's the question of the day. And and it's that what are teenagers thinking about most of the time? It deals with that topic. And then folks can post their reply. I have seen some pretty ugly cyberbullying out of Ask FM.
It gets nasty.
I've seen the,
It's public.
you're ugly, it's just really crushing kids' egos.
Why on earth the kids, they put on Instagram all the time, blow up my Ask FM, but they want people, what? I don't get that.
Well, I have an opinion, so, and I've asked my kids this. It's that instant gratification. We need to feel either that people want to talk to us, it's that popularity mantra, and feel free to kick in there. You've got a lot more experience with this than I do. But they need to feel that. We have a generation of instant gratification and have to have instant feedback to everything. And sometimes it's a popularity contest. I have more friends than you. I have more posts than you. I was able to get a bigger rise out of this group than you. Unfortunately, to get that response, sometimes they either put themselves out there, or they'll do it at the expense of one of their friends, or they'll make something up. That's just completely out of left field. And then 2 weeks later, when they have a chance to sit and think about it, they go, that was really stupid. But by then the damage is done. Once you hit send, you can't take it back. You can't take it back. Damage is done. We have seen it originate, if a phone is stolen or taken, or hey, it's going to be funny, I'm going to post what I think is a really snarky comment and make it look like it's coming from Jimmy, and it's not. And then, the next door neighbor, his mom sees it, calls his mom, it just gets ugly really quick. But that's why, in my opinion, it's hard to start that conversations around the dinner table sometimes. But it's, when you go home, it's, hey, I hope you don't leave too paranoid, but let's have an honest conversation around the dinner table about Instagram, Snapchat, what are you sharing, who are your friends? Do you know who your friends are? I mean, sometimes that's a great place to start. Do you know who you're sharing stuff with? If you have 1,000 people, do you really know 1,000 people that well? Some of them are really good. Some kids I've talked to, man, they've got it. They're spot on. Gives me a little bit of hope that they are spot on and know what's going on. You know, schools have been telling them, college recruiters are telling them, their coaches are telling them, their teachers are telling them. That's the key to this. We are not taking the devices away. It's not going to happen. It's how do you participate? This is, you know, I liken this presentation today to driver's ed for your kid. Are you going to put your kid in the car without driver's ed? No. This is social media driver's ed for parents. All right, yes?
What should we tell our kids to do if somebody posts or sends them something really bad?
If it's really bad, I would say come to these two ladies right here to start that conversation, because if it's affecting them.
And what would your student say about that? No
He-
way.
Well, I know. Well, Mason's relationship is different, so he would be all for it. He would come to me. No offense, but unfortunately, with my reputation, at least at Loyola, with doing some of this stuff, some of the kids come straight to me. I involve a guidance counselor right away, but they will come straight to me and say, "Look, this is happening. What do I do?"
So what if they just hit delete and pretend, well, I never had it?
If nothing else, take a screenshot of it,
Okay.
so that there's some evidence of it, that if it happens again and again, and they get to the point where they are open,
But can they
talking to an
be
adult.
held responsible for the conversation? There's some bullying, going on.
I don't know.
Depends.
We try and split it out though, where if it's two kids who are engaged with one another, they're not treated as a lump sum. We sort of look at each accountability. But either way, I mean, you want documentation of it.
Okay.
Whether you choose to use it later, who knows?
The other piece about this is sometimes kids get these, like on Ask FM, kids will post questions that it's a sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of question.
Yeah.
Like, is it hard to be so stupid? Those kind of questions. And so they feel like they need to respond like a flippant, quick reaction, and they get themselves in trouble just by engaging on that level. So simply coming for some coaching about how to back out of a rock in a hard place, that's a good conversation.
Is Ask FM widely used in high school? Because I haven't seen that anymore.
It's more ninth grade. Like I'm not seeing it in upper class, but yeah, some of the freshmen sort of left over from middle school, they grow out of it because they realize it's not that fun.
This is probably naive. Say your kid has an Instagram and they're over it, they're done, or we shut it down. It's not really gone if it's closed. So even if it was here a year ago, somebody can still search it and say, okay, you're accountable.
Once
So
it's out there, it's out there. You're not pulling it back. And sometimes there was a big blow up last year with Instagram because they bought Instagram for $1 billion. Sometimes when you put the photo up, you kind of relinquish intellectual property rights to Instagram, so they use the photo.
Well, I think Ask FM is the one where there's been terrible outcomes from suicide, and they went to the Ask FM guys, and they didn't care. So what? It's not our problem.
It's not their, and that's
Yeah, they just didn't even-
that's the point to walk away with. These people are out to make money. They're not looking for our well-being. They're trying to make money. Unfortunately, sometimes at the expense of kids.
The Ask FM, it's public, so you can just go on and anyone can go on and check it. So it is an easier one as a parent to monitor, because I think, and to your point, especially if a child is in one of those positions where they're being bullied, and then to Sam's point, they feel like they have to respond to defend themselves, it spirals rapidly. Plus side is it's easier to check and see what's happening.
It's not anonymous, or it is?
Ask FM is anonymous. Or
Some
it's,
of them
it's
are-
public, not anonymous, public.
Some of them, it becomes anonymous because they don't use anything identifying in their handles. Some, it's like Samantha Strada, SevernSchool.com.
And I think I heard of them as asking very maybe mature questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's people commenting on it.
So if you can get a hold of what their handle is, so to speak, you can see all of the questions they've been asked and everything they've responded to. What you can't necessarily do is figure out who asked the question, but you can at least get a sense of the content that your child is dealing with on, and you can see when they've been on it. So it'll say, 3 months ago versus last night.
I have it's probably a silly question, but I love the iPads. iPads have been great, but I have a 6th grader, an 11th grader, and a 9th grader as well. So there's a big difference between, honestly, when my 11th grader was in 7th grade, sometimes I felt like she was on too much, I just shut down the internet. They go, what happened to the internet? I don't know. Next girl. Now, you can't do that. And they have to be on the iPads for their homework. So you have to be on the iPad, but if you've got your little feeds coming up and she's constantly, there's no way to bifurcate that on the iPad to say.
And this is where we are in the digital age, right? To try and suppress some of the stuff isn't going to happen.
She can use it. It's just the amount of time that's on there.
Understood, and I think that's where it comes into that home conversation, that home relationship on how that works and what the expectations are, and anything that you can share with. And the kids laugh at me a little bit based off things I'll quote, because now movies that I quote, they weren't born when they were made. But one of my all-time favorite greatest hacker movies is War Games. That is as legitimate as it gets to how it works. It's like, look, we've been dealing with this for a long time. This problem has existed. You just have to deal with it very differently now. Let's try and at least find a common dialogue. And we've gotten there with them. And they'll come tell me now, hey, my friend did this really idiotic thing. We hope we keep them busy enough with schoolwork that temptation isn't there, but it's right there in your face. And the shiny ball syndrome, I have to look at it.
Or even like
It's
Skype
tough.
will just pop up. Somebody wants to Skype you. It's just hard to.
But that you can disable, right? You can disable the pop-ups.
You can.
So
you can,
like
but
push notifications or alerts
Well,
or whatever.
Skype you can go say, don't bother me while I'm doing something.
yeah, you can mark yourself busy.
Yeah.
But if you're going to get if you have a text application open or something like that,
You have it open, it just pops
it's
up.
mental discipline a little bit too for that.
It's hard.
There's no magic bullet. There's no magic bullet. In any of the software that claims that it's going to help you as a parent manage the device, the kid knows how to turn it off in the first 30 seconds to install it.
And I guess to link to that is, because I kind of have that same issue, is that you can't turn it off, and I love the iPads as well, but I also wonder at school, or maybe the counselor student that does that, is what is the accountability at school? Like, does anybody monitor that every once in a while, do teachers walk by just to see?
In terms of classroom management, it's added a little layer of that. So, like, I know when I teach a class, I'm mobile, so I'm behind the screens as I teach. I mean, just how, and this, but it goes on. There's nothing.
Yeah.
And the kids know too. They're
It
like,
definitely
this person's
goes on.
playing
Yeah,
this instead of writing, or they know. Like,
Right.
they know who's doing it.
And I know I get stuff from my daughter during the day, and I'm like, pay attention, what are you doing? And it aggravates me, and yet, it's like, right, you can't take it away.
But look at it this way.
You can do your math
They
with a pencil, but
can't
she
not
can't.
multitask, though. Truth be told, they really cannot not. It's like a dull landscape for them when you ask them to do one thing. So it's not. This is gonna sound. Some teachers would disagree with me, but I don't necessarily think it's rude when they pull away and they do something. It's like practically irresistible. So we fight the fight and we say, please tune in, but. It's not something, that's not a battle I'm going to fight too hard. If it becomes a problem with a certain student, yes, then it's a case-by-case basis. I don't know, but other teachers may feel absolutely differently than I do.
In the middle school, we have a pretty rigid policy where the child, like when the child walks into the classroom, any Madden playing, that's a huge one, the Madden football, these stupid games where you catch the hamburger bun and the cheese and the lettuce. Anyway, that is like addictive for them. That's off. So, but because it does happen, when it comes on, they get a detention. I mean, it's sort of like a zero tolerance thing. But you can't monitor it, and so I'll sometimes walk behind kids and you see this like flash, which shows me that they've minimized something.
Right.
And sometimes we will pursue it because you can tell what they were on most recently, but it just depends. It's sort of
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope because it's accountability.
and it's more of like it's
right.
containment, not prevention.
Fast and furious, and
And to be honest,
so afraid they're going to miss something.
to put my teacher hat on for a second, sometimes that device is no more distracting than the snow out the window.
Yeah.
So there are distractions everywhere, and classroom management to that point, you're never going to have 100% of the kids paying attention 100% of the time.
And it's also if you're playing games that are writing the paper that you need to write, you're gonna have to write that paper at home later, so it's their own punishment,
Like
too,
natural.
it's that sort of self.
I mean, I worry more about what they share and how they share than how they're processing part. I mean, if we can fix at an earlier age to realize what you're doing and maybe why that's not such a great idea to do it that way, I think we'll fix a good amount of problems. I mean, I do have a lot of hope because some younger kids that I talk to now get this, but there's still the majority that don't, and they still do the dumb stuff. And that will come back to haunt them, and is going to show up in a job interview. Sometimes that's an awkward conversation to have in an interview. You have to find the right way to bring that up. Hey, I got this really great interview, and I know you really want to come work here. In my case, it's a Catholic institution. What's this? Don't know. And sometimes it's just the color drains from the face.
I have a question from way back at the beginning.
Okay.
Because I really don't know about how to use all this stuff.
Sure.
You said not to link a credit card. Don't you have to?
In iTunes, you do. That's why if you do link a card, make sure it has a very low balance.
Okay.
I didn't think you had to put a credit card. I thought there was something you could check.
There is.
That you don't have to use a credit
So
card.
I'm not an Apple user, so my Apple experts
Okay.
in the room help me.
Because we don't use
For
credit
your
cards
Apple
on
ID, there is something you can check because I turned it off on my son so that
Okay.
he
Yeah,
can't
on,
download anything.
on the iTunes.
Well, he can't download anything he has to pay for.
Got it.
But you can say, no pay account or something like that.
Okay.
So you don't have to have a credit card because it was my American Express at first.
Got it.
That
Got
wasn't such a great idea.
I got a question. You said you don't bank with your mobile device. You bank online.
I write checks.
Your nature there.
I write checks.
I don't trust anything online either, or?
Nope, I know where the data goes. So I don't trust it.
You know too much.
I know too much, probably.
Yeah, like,
I mean, checks are vulnerable too, sure.
Retirement accounts, anything like that, you just have them just in the mail.
I get paper statements. I get paper statements. I do.
I have a question for Mary. So where is this being incorporated into like the conduct code and those things for the kids with their online content?
On the, you mean on Net Classrooms, for example?
Well,
I'm-
no, I'm sorry. Not the conduct tab, but like your ethics, your code of ethics. Like we will do this here and we won't do this here. Like how is this being worked in?
There is, so the beginning of the year, there was a huge iPad orientation.
Right.
There's iPad, I believe they're called usage guidelines, that are posted everywhere. Teachers regularly, consistently talk about it, because it's pervasive.
Because I know about all the forms, but it's like next, finish. Mom, this is 10 pages long, but
Yeah.
so it's consistently as each new
It's
thing.
just woven in, because it's part of daily life.
Yeah, good question. It's probably a little naive, but number one, the terms of use for pretty much all of these social media things is thou shalt not be younger than 13. Yet we know full well that nearly every sixth grader in this school has got an Instagram account, and half the seventh graders that are still under 13 do as well. Do you have any recommendations on how to sort of broach the topic of, we're starting off with sort of we're ignoring the terms of service, but we recognize that social conversations don't take place face to face anymore. They take place on Instagram or wherever it is. So, how do you deal with that with a kid and say, we're going to let you do it, but we recognize that we're not really doing what we tell you to do.
One quick thing to inject into that,
Yeah.
that usually the terms of service are, you can't sign up for this if you're under 13 unless you have parent permission.
Is that right?
Yeah. Because that's I think that one's COPA, and that if you're under 13, you have to have parent permission.
I think that this also applies to just, when your kid is capable of staying home alone or crossing a street when they're little, you also know your own kid and when they're capable of making, or you hope, you know, it's always a little of this with parenting, you know, when you hope that they're capable of making good choices online. And then I think it's okay to say, okay, this may be what this company thinks is okay for age usage, but I'm also the parent and I have to make a determination about what I think is okay for our family expectations, for your friends and their conduct. And I think that's the line to walk, you know. Okay, well, you know, Instagram may say 13, and you've proven yourself to be actually a pretty reliable kid. You know, I feel like we have good communication. So long as that continues, we will grant this for you. Or not, or the other way around. You haven't really.
So explicitly,
yeah.
Coming back to the fact that it's a choice of permission that you're giving. You are their friend and follower. And so we'll monitor it, trust and hope, and presume that there won't be any issues. But like Big Brother's watching. But as long as they know that you know, and you tell them it's a choice, it's helpful.
Sort of a bottom line question. So when we were these kids' ages, our parents would say, don't write anything in a note or a letter you don't want published on the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer. So we have they don't read newspapers anymore, and they don't write anymore. So is there like a bottom line, like to say to a kid, anything you do on social media, anyone can see it anytime down the road? I mean, they're going to blow you off, but that's probably the truth. So is there a bottom line message to give them about all this?
I mean, the bottom line is whatever you put out there, it's there permanently. And I know permanence isn't a word that they kind of, the example I use, I live in a very small town. I go to the post office to get my mail. My uncle's deployed overseas a good bit, and he'll send postcards. So I'll walk in, and the postmaster will say, hey, your uncle's in Indonesia. Wait a minute, that's a federal offense. You read my mail. But it's a postcard. It's no different than putting a postcard in the mail. It can be read along the way. It can be read by anybody, just a passerby. And what you do with it, I mean, it's out there. It's floating.
I mean, they're concrete and immediate thinkers often. So maybe reference it back to, would you be okay with Mr. Lagarde saying this? Don't put anything up that you wouldn't, you know, maybe relate it back to someone who's a little more in their daily life. No, they don't.
And
a lot of times
adults don't
doesn't.
get it either. I mean, there are government officials getting in trouble every single day over stupid online things. And
Right, so it's normalized.
yeah.
I told my son not to put anything up that he would be embarrassed if his grandmother saw.
There you go.
So,
There you go.
And some kids are going to listen and some won't.
And that's life, and that's the same, teenagers dealing with the same problems they've dealt with forever, now it's just in a public forum.
Steve just had a quick question
Sure.
about this info on the GPS disabling.
Yeah.
Is it possible to simply disable the ability for a particular app to
Yes.
geotag your photos?
Yes.
Versus, you know, because there's some functionality with GPS that
That
you'd
you
like
would
to
want
have.
to turn on. Yeah, so applications are granular. So you can go in and determine which ones you want to turn off and which ones you want to leave on. That's your choice. By default, they're all on. But that's your choice for which ones you want to have and not have access to.
Where do you go to do that?
So at the last page of that, if you have an Android or an iPhone, there's a link to take you through each one.
And if your child has already taken pictures of your pet at home and posted it on Instagram, can you delete it for what's already posted, or that's a lost cause?
Good question. If it's on Twitter, it's a lost cause. If it's on Instagram, you probably have the ability to take that photo down and repost it. Facebook, you can take the photo down. If you posted it to any of the other ones that we've talked about today, they're out there and it's gone.
Is
It just
the
depends.
location that thing, like on Instagram, it has the kids, the username, and then right under it, is that the location thing?
There's two types of locations. So one will say, taken in Severna Park, Maryland. If you download the photo, you can take the photo and plug it back into Google, and Google will pinpoint it on a map because it's got the GPS coordinates embedded in the photo.
So can you get down to the specific level of saying, I don't mind saying, here's where the photo's taken, but I don't want it to geotag where the photo is.
It's all or nothing. It's not that granular. Because to determine where it is, it's got to have the coordinates to generalize the town.
So what do I do if there's a photo on there?
On which site? Instagram. You can go to Instagram, and you should. I don't have an Instagram account. You can go and you can take that photo down,
No, but to find it, like, how do I know? Like, I think ours is disabled, but that's, I have my thing, I can't
So on the phone, you have an iPhone, correct?
Yeah.
So on the iPhone,
Settings to privacy,
Thank
and
you.
then you can either turn off location services for every app, or you can do it app specific.
Okay, I think.
So I have it on for, like, I'm hunting for a house, I have it on for certain real estate things.
Yeah.
And do you have a recommendation of the best smartphone security?
yes, there's a top 10 list there. Personally, I'm using the products from Kaspersky, and it does what I need it to do. They're not rated at the top. There's some free ones out there. There's a couple that are $5.99 a year. Mine's paid for. It's cost me $60 for the year. And I haven't had any problems with it. So there is a little top 10. You do a little research. If you have your home machine, sometimes they'll offer a deal if you're using Norton at home for an extra X amount of dollars to tack on the cell phone. So take a look at what you have currently, and then take a look at the link for recommendations, and then make it's consumer choice.
Where is that top 10 list?
It's there's a link in the PowerPoint slides. It's the last slide, and it's like a little top 10, and that one's current for at the end of 2013. That one's current for reviews. Cool. You've got a good group. This is fun. This is why I like doing these, because I try to get as much information as I can, because every area I go to is different, and everyone has different parenting challenges anyway. So when I do this, it makes my presentations better in the long run, and I can kind of process more information. So I'm very happy Severn had me back. It's been fun, and I hope you have a fun conversation tonight. Don't go home and take the phone. That's